Nuno Carew adjusts his garments and speaks in a thick Portuguese accent. My brothers, there is a storm brewing over the horizon, but if we can weather the coming tempest, the future of our order will be secured. His fellow Templars nodded their heads in solemn agreement, polishing their swords or adjusting their armor. They sat around a large table inside of a wooden building, in the middle of a clearing, lit only by torches that flickered against the dark wood panelings. This was the headquarters of the Japanese Rite of the Templar Order, established in the second half of the 16th century. And its members felt a great sense of urgency in their words. If they could succeed where their European brethren had failed, their Grand Master would undoubtedly look kindly on them. And what better way to make a name for themselves than by securing an entire nation for the Templar Order? Japan was a land of chaos and bloodshed during the Sengoku period. But the Templars knew that the country was ripe for conversion. All they had to do was secure the loyalty of a few powerful warlords and though the Templars were hated by the assassins, who had been operating in the region for some time already, the European Templars decided that they would send a team to Japan in order to expand the influence of the order. A small group of Templars, most of them posing as Jesuit missionaries, set out to conquer Japan for the Templar cause. They were led by the Spanish Templar Francis Xavier, who established a church in Yamaguchi. It didn't take long for the Templars to make their first convert. Toriemoto Tada, a minor local lord, the Templars, eager to impress potential new recruits, cultivated alliances with the local warlords and clans, claiming that they could end the civil wars that had plagued Japan for decades and bring the people peace. Most of them were skeptical, but desperate for peace. Many agreed to hear them out, and the Templars, with their show of military force, promises of prosperity, and claims to be agents of God, converted many of the lords. Among the earliest converts to the Templar cause were members of the noble Shimazu clan. The clan's lord, Shimazu Takahisa, even offered to assist the Templars in establishing a base of operations in his lands. However, this proved difficult as the civil wars that plagued Japan made travel dangerous. The Templars' attempts to find new recruits were frequently hindered by the constant wars between clans, as well as their hostility toward outsiders. The Templars were also heavily opposed by the Japanese assassins, who worked to prevent the spread of their influence in Japan and recruited individuals from the ranks of the ninja and samurai, such as Hattori Hanzo and Yamauchi Taka. The assassins supported Tokugawa Ieyasu, one of the many warlords of the period, who similarly opposed the Templars' influence and, as such, tasked his former squire Shea Sharia Sharo Kyonobu with reporting any Templar activity in the land. Despite the opposition they faced, the Templars eventually managed to recruit, among others, Wisugi Kenshin, head of the Wisugi clan. Kenshin fought various battles with his rival Takeda Shingon, the owner of a sword of Edom. Their rivalry ended when Shingon was assassinated in 1573 by the Tokugawa and the assassins, and Kenshin himself was killed by the assassin Hattori Hanzo in 1578. Meanwhile, Alessandro Vallegano, an Italian Jesuit missionary and member of the Roman Rite, was sent to aid fellow missionary Francisco Cabral, who was already doing missionary work in Japan. However, the two men despised one another almost instantly. Vallegnano used his Jesuit connections to scour Japan for Templar recruits. And upon Cabral confronting Vallegnano regarding this, Alessandro used his influence to force him to resign from his post as superior of the Jesuit mission. By the 1570s, The fledgling Japanese Rite was led by the Portuguese Templar Nuno Quero, who answered directly to the inner sanctum. In addition to spreading the Templar ideology in the country, which he did with the aid of his partner Duarte de Mello, Quero aimed to retrieve the 3 imperial regalia of Japan due to their religious and political significance, believing that possession of the artifacts would allow the order to rule over the people of Japan, knowing the inner sanctum would disagree with his ambitions. Quero lied to them about the regalia's nature as pieces of Eden so that they would continue to fund his mission to retrieve the regalia. Quero secured an alliance with the Shinbaku, a secret organization founded by the deposed shogun Ashikaga Yoshiaki, to regain his power. In exchange for the Templars' support, the Shinbakufu stole 2 of the regalia, the Miriata no Ka and the Sorokuzanagi no Tsurugi, that were safeguarded by the Kakashiba Iki, the Japanese Brotherhood of Assassins, who were decimated by the Shinbakufu in the process. Meanwhile, Quero and de Mello focused on expanding the Templars' influence, recruiting the Daimyuki Morakai to build a secret army for the order and influencing Akichi, a member of the Shinbakufu, to betray his lord Oda Nobunaga, whose ambitions to unify Japan threatened to undermine the Templars' plans. To ensure Mitsuhide's cooperation, Quero took 2 of his children, Hosokawa Tama and Akachi, while the former was forced to join the Templars and help fund their operations by overseeing the silver trade in Tamba. The latter was held prisoner by Quero to guarantee Tama's compliance. Years of machinations ensued, with Quero, Mitsuhide, and the Shinbakufu battling for supremacy in Japan against Oda Nobunaga. However, as Nobunaga drew closer to victory, he became more suspicious of Mitsuhide's motives. On June 2, 1582, Oda Nobunaga's forces were betrayed by Akechi Mitsuhide, who had grown tired of his master's increasingly erratic behavior and murdered him in Hanogi Temple. This allowed the Templars' allies, including the Shimazu clan, to defeat Oda's remaining forces and claim his lands. By 1600, the country was united under the rule of Tokugawa, an ally of the assassins, and the Japanese Templars would subsequently fade into obscurity under Tokugawa rule. However, some Templars continued to operate in secrecy under Tokugawa rule as part of the Shimazu clan. In the early 18th century, Shimazu, Sato, an illegitimate daughter of the Shimazu clan's leader, was brought to Japan following her father's death to be trained in the clan's ways. In time, Saito and her companions discovered that they were actually illegitimate children of the Shimazu clan, conceived by her father with various women outside of his marriage. After becoming an efficient assassin for the clan, Saito was inducted into the Templar Order and was sent alongside her subordinates to search for the lost Khmer city of Angkor, believed by the Templars to be an Esu site. In exchange for retrieving the lost city's treasure, Saito was promised that she and her men, all of whom were of mixed heritage and thus looked down upon by the clan's Japanese members, would become full-fledged members of the clan. In February 1725, Saito and her followers, including a faction of Japanese ninja led by Fumasu, arrived in the Portuguese colony of Macau to search for clues to Angkor's location, while attempting to silence those who knew about the lost city's existence in order to maintain its secrecy. Sato and her men clashed several times with the British assassin Edward Kenway, who was also on Angkor's trail. Around this time, the Templars began influencing the power struggle in Macau between its various merchants and trade companies, aiding the businessman's son of the Hualien Trading Company, Alan Jacob of the Far East Company, and Jan van Aert of the Dutch East India Company, with their plans to sabotage their mutual rival, Li Hui. However, most of these schemes were thwarted by Edward. In time, tensions between Saito's mixed-blood followers and the Japanese ninja in her service grew, eventually resulting in the latter abandoning Saito and branding her a traitor to the Shimazu clan. During the subsequent civil war between the two ninja factions, Fumisukuna enlisted Edward's help to assassinate Saito aboard Sun's floating gambling hall. However, the assassin ended up striking an alliance with Saito instead, and together they attempted to recover the sea log from Sun fighting against both Sukuna's ninja and members of the Chinese Brotherhood of Assassins who also sought the log. Ultimately, Sato and Edward lost the sea log to the Chinese assassins who killed Sun and joined forces with Madame Li and Sukuna to find Nanko. The conflict also resulted in the deaths of all of Sato's followers, prompting Edward to recruit the former Templar into his organization, the Zhongwei Union, whereupon she worked alongside them to find Angkor and its treasure. It seems that despite their failures in Europe, the Japanese Templars proved to be quite successful. But as the years went on, they learned the hard way that even in a far-off land like Japan, the assassins were waiting to stop them. How do you think the Japanese Templars turned out? Let me know in the comments below. Also, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time!